Welcome to Michelle's Making. Hope you're ready for coffee, crafts, cookies, and cocktails. Let's get going.
Welcome and welcome back to those of you who are returning. I do appreciate it. And thank you again to subscribers who have been sharing with their family and friends and encouraging them to subscribe as well. I do appreciate it. Today is National Nut Day. National Make a Dog's Day. Oh my gosh. And how do you think you make a dog's day? You just pay attention to them and spend some time with them. And I don't know a dog yet that doesn't love that. But let's enjoy our coffee. I've had my coffee today and I enjoyed French vanilla. It's my old standby. I really love it. So I've had coffee and I'm ready to make it a great day. So let's get going.
Today we're going to make stuffed cabbage soup. For this recipe, you'll need onions, garlic cloves, seasoned salt, ground beef, diced tomatoes, tomato sauce, Worcestershire sauce, chicken stock, cabbage, and instant white rice. Now this recipe came from Mama Loves Food, and I made the recipe exactly as it was described there. In retrospect, I will make it a little different next time. I'm not a huge rice fan and I never use minute rice, so I had to actually go out and get it for this recipe. And in the future, I may omit or put very little rice and more cabbage. My granddaughter actually said she wanted more cabbage. But as you can see here, you begin by dicing up the onions, mince your garlic. You're going to chop up your cabbage, which seems like so much cabbage, but it cooks down. I will link the recipe in the description box, but you begin by browning your ground beef. Now, I don't always drain my ground beef after browning, depending on how much fat content is there. And I think I used an 85-15 or a 90-10 on this, and most of that grease cooked out of it when I was browning the onions and garlic. Just push the beef to the side of the pan and add your garlic and onions. And add your seasoned salt at this time too. So you'll see I add that here and stir it just a little bit, but mostly keeping the onions by themselves there so that they could continue to brown. Once your onions have cooked down a little bit, you're going to add your diced tomatoes and your tomato sauce, and then stir and let this simmer for a while. Next, you'll add your chicken broth. Now, that's another thing with this recipe. I felt like it could have used more chicken stock, definitely. And I did add some at the end, but not enough. It turned out more like a goulash than a soup, in my opinion. And you can see here as I finished chopping up the cabbage, it looks like so much, but it cooked down, and I could have added at least another half a head, but I would have to use a larger pot because you'll see here in a minute, after I add the cabbage, this pot is full. Stir that cabbage in, and as you can see here, it was full, so I did have to poke the cabbage down a little bit before I could really stir. But I let this simmer a bit, and it cooked the cabbage down and gave me a little more room in the pot to add the rice. We're finally getting a little bit cooler mornings here in Florida. Not much cooler, but a little bit. It's our fall, and this soup is perfect for a fall meal. But you let this simmer and cook down till the rice is cooked. It doesn't take too long, but you could use regular grain rice for this instead of instant. But there you have stuffed cabbage soup. Our craft today is a winter gnome. For this craft, I used a pair of socks. And actually, these are socks I'd worn once or twice, but they were still in pretty good shape, so it was going to work out just fine. And a can of vegetables. You start by pushing the can down into one of the socks and tie it off with a zip tie. With the second sock, you're going to cut it diagonally above the cuff to the tip of the toe, cutting off the heel and the toe. So you can see here where the worn part on the sock was, it wasn't going to matter. That's getting cut off. And this is a pretty thick sock. Turn it inside out, and you're going to glue that side down in just a moment. Next, I took the white nautical rope from Dollar Tree and cut it the length of the can. You don't need to worry about overlap because it's still going to be a little bit long and you'll have to trim it, but it was necessary because as you unwind it and get the 3 separate strands, you'll see it's longer. There was enough length to overlap the top a little bit, and that's where I was going to glue. Once I had all my strands unraveled, I started applying the glue. Now, I cannot caution you enough about watch out for the fingers and hot glue. I burned myself pretty bad here. You'll see in just a second. As I was applying the glue and the strands, I went back and put glue over the top of the strands because they were starting to unravel a little, and that was going to make sure they adhered well to the gnome. And when I did that, I then crossed over and was gluing on the other side, and I touched my fingers to that glue there, right there. Oh my gosh, that burned. Then, as a smart crafter, I began using a tool to push it down into the glue. The glue was applied all the way around on the top. I let that dry, and I began to glue the side of the hat. Again, be careful here pushing the sock in because that glue will come through if you push too hard, but I had a very light touch this time. If you remember from my thankful gnome, I used these little rubber balls that I painted with a flesh tone and cut off a little bit of the ball to give a flat surface. I had 4 of those, and this is my second one I'm using. Turn this hat right side out, use a stick or a dowel or something to push the tip through. Next, I decided to unravel the strands completely so that it was all more like hair. I don't know if this ends up looking a little bit like Cousin It from the Addams Family. What do you think? Let me know in the comments if you remember that Cousin It. You can see I purposely didn't trim off the sock from the can because that was going to be my stuffing inside the hat to kind of give it some form to stand up a little bit. Next, I decided where I was going to place the nose, and I lifted the brim of the hat and applied hot glue to the nose and set it in place. The next step is to apply some hot glue around the top of the nose and fold the brim of the hat down and adhere it around the nose so his nose is just peeking out. finishing touch for this gnome is going to be a tassel for the top of his hat. I had this tassel in my stash, so it didn't cost anything. I began by winding the little loop that you tie the tassel with around and hot gluing it. And the reason I did this rather than cut it off was to give a little more surface area for the glue to adhere to when I stuck it in the end of the hat. Put a little dab of glue around the rest of the brim of the hat, and this gnome is done. I love how he turned out. I think it's so cute. I think I've just developed an affinity for gnomes this year, and I've got a few other ideas, so you're going to see some more gnomes in my crafting. Let me know in the comments, do you like gnomes in your decor? Our winter gnome is done, and now it's time for a refreshing adult beverage. Today I'm going to make a blue Rumtini. Now I like the blue curacao. I guess I just like the blue drinks, but for this one we're going to use rum and the Jose Cuervo margarita mix. Everything goes into the shaker with ice. Shake, shake, shake. Chill that glass. Once you're done and your drink is well chilled, pour it in, and the only thing left now is to enjoy it.
Well, folks, that's it for another week. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I do appreciate it. Don't forget to take time to stop and smell the coffee. Share with your family and friends. Let's make it a great week. I'll see you next Friday.